Let freedom ring across America. Let freedom ring across America.
All right, this is Jeffrey Sisk. I want to welcome you to the Zoo podcast. This is the very first episode. I was on the air about 10 years ago. I did about a year and a half of broadcasting, really enjoyed it. I tell you what, though, I never thought I would be here again. It isn't something that I thought I would be doing, yet here I am. I'm excited to be here. When I was doing this before, I had a veteran that helped back then, helped book all the guests. And she was booking people on the show back then that were amazing. They would go on CNN or Fox or one of the big networks and do their 2 minutes. But they were coming on my show for an hour. And a lot of times we were then taking calls from the public. Sometimes we were doing big roundtables. It was a very fun show. We were covering topics that the public really cared about, about our country. And I might bring some of that back as we go forward. But the goal of this show is to bring you some great guests, bring you topics that you'd want to know about. And above all, I care deeply about bringing you truth to the airwaves. And I'm going to say this up front. I know that we're in a world right now that is absolutely flooded with podcasts. But this show will be different. And I'm going to help you make sense out of this crazy, nutty world that we're living in right now. And I don't have all the answers, but I'll tell you this much. I'm an honest person. I care about the truth. And if you ask me something and I don't know the answers, I guarantee you I'm going to dig as hard as I can to get to the bottom of it. And I'll find all of us answers, and we'll learn stuff together. Sometimes the truth is hard to find. And you'd think in all this technology that we have today that would be easier, to get the correct information. But, the opposite's true. And in many ways today, because of people and narratives and propaganda and all those things, in many ways, we're less informed today than we were before. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be with you. Welcome to this first episode. So on the show tonight, what we're going to do, and by the way, this will always be an informal show. This isn't going to be a structured, newscast or something. This is going to be a conversation that we're having. Tonight, what I want to talk about is we've all seen a lot of censoring going on in America. And we've also seen a cancellation happening of traditional American values. If you're like me and you're over 50 years old, pretty much we had values that have been around for 200 and something years since our country was founded. And everybody that I knew growing up, Americans were fiercely independent. They had strong convictions. They were honest. They were truthful for the most part. You could do business on a handshake, if you can believe that. Try that today. And normal back then was you went through high school, went to college, got married, raised some kids, and you grew your community. You were involved in that community. You might volunteer to serve your country. Remember the amazing quote from John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country. And, truthfully, that was how people thought back then. And, in those days when I was coming along, you could not get out of high school if you didn't learn American history and learn civics. And if you don't know what civics is where they teach you everything about how your government works. I meet a lot of people these days especially in the younger generations, have no idea whatsoever, how our government works. And I tell you what, you need to know this stuff. So that's part about this show will be to educate you about these things. Um, an educated population like that built an exceptional country, and the entire world looked up to us back then. And we have fallen far from that tree. And back then, also political parties, Republicans and Democrat, conservative and liberal, everybody supported our basic values. People didn't care how you voted, or what candidate you supported or any of those things, because we all agreed on those big things: freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, the right to bear arms. So really back then, truly, a conversation about elections and politics is probably about the most boring conversation you would have had. So we need to get back there. That's why I'm back on the air. I'm going to be honest with you. For anybody, in the younger generations, 20s, 30s, 40s that are listening to me, I want you, I want your children, I want your grandchildren to be exceptional. And I want them to have the same opportunities that I had growing up. And I want them to have freedom. And that means we need to understand what are the forces that are harming our country. And we need to figure out how to stand up and counter those while we are still free enough, that we can do something about it. There was an interview that came out today that was Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson. And, I've noticed we've had a lot of things in my lifetime where politicians are not voting for things that we care about. Let me get to a web browser here, and I'm going to pull this up for you. But I thought what was said here by Tucker is very, very true. So I'm going to go ahead and share it with you.
Particularly galling and hard to live with is when you call that system a democracy.
Right.
That's too dishonest for me. I would much rather live in a monarchy where everyone thinks the king has been assigned by God to rule over us and his whims are law. And, that makes sense. I don't like it, but at least it has internal coherence.
Right.
When they stand up and pass a $60 billion funding bill for Ukraine when 70% of the population doesn't want it. In Congress over the weekend to pass something that people don't want while ignoring the things that people do want. And if they do the same kind of thing again and again for like 50 years and they call it a democracy, that will drive you insane.
Yeah.
Because it's just too dishonest. Why not just say, we don't give a shit what you want. We are getting something out of this Ukraine funding, whether it's like the thrill of being masters of the universe or whether it's money from the defense contractors, whatever we're getting out of it is more important to us than your opinion. This is not self-government. You don't run this country. We do. Shut up and obey. If they at least said that, you'd be like, okay, I get it. Those are the terms. But if I get another fucking lecture from Joe Scarborough about defending democracy, when this is not a democracy, it's not even a close approximation of a democracy, then I'm going to go crazy because I just can't deal with the lying.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. What's interesting is that there are people saying that now. And I think that's a relatively new thing in terms of mainstream media. And I consider what you do on X mainstream media. I mean, this is what we're on right now is essentially mainstream media. It used to be, you could call it, there's corporate controlled media.
I agree.
And that used to be mainstream media. Mainstream media used to be CNN. It's not really anymore. Mainstream media is what, in terms of the volume consumed, more people are consuming things on Twitter, on X, than there are on anything else. They're consuming information through the internet, through YouTube, for good or for bad, whether it's correct or incorrect. They're consuming information in different forms now than ever before. So more people are saying what you're saying than have ever said it before. And when people lie, and when people bullshit and gaslight, it's more offensive now than it's ever been before because there's so much access to truth. that it's just, you could see it now. If you're paying attention, if you're not a boomer who only reads the newspaper, you pay attention and you see it and you go, this is horse shit.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, what we need to do is untangle how we got here. And I think some people out there understand what's going on. But I think a lot of you out there don't, and you might have heard some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight. But it'll be surprising to some of you. But basically, we're going to go on a little journey together. I'm going to teach you how to do something. Let me get over to a web browser here. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about your sources of information. Who's controlling that? Everything you see and hear. And I'm talking about movies, television shows, magazines, newspapers, the products you buy, the influencers out there that are promoting those products. Who owns those companies? Who is controlling all that information? And we're going to take a look here. And what you're going to find out when I get to the end of this is that a very small group of people owns literally just about everything. It's like the cartel of everything. And, they've adopted these policies that are very contrary to American values. And we're going to talk about that. All right. So what I want you to do, I'm going to teach you how to fish. That's what this show is usually going to do. It's going to try and teach you how to get the information. So I want you to go to finance.yahoo.com. All right. And I'm going to teach you to figure out who owns the companies that you're, and what we're going to look at here are the big tech companies, all of the big conglomerate media companies. You have these companies now and they own like TV networks, movie studios, magazines, book publishing, all of those things all in one place. And then also the big companies, the Procter and Gamble's, the McDonald's, the Nikes, the Walmarts, the Costco's. Who owns all these companies out there? All right, so let's take a look. And what you want to do here, there's a little box, this quote lookup. And I took you here because Yahoo Finance is free and they have all this, have all the information here. But we're going to put in first Google, and you can type the company name and you can see it comes up first here. Ticker symbol is GOOG. And once that's up on the left over here, you can click on holders, and it's going to tell you who are the biggest investors in this company. All right, so I want you to notice you got Vanguard Group, BlackRock, and State Street Capital, and FMR, which is Fidelity. But the main ones that are going to show up over and over for everybody are these three companies. And I'm going to tell you something interesting. They typically have about 20% of a company, and it's enough for them to make waves and dictate policy and have people on the board. And I'll tell you what they do. They put the fear in these companies that if you don't play ball with us, we'll just tank your stock. And I tell you what, I'm pretty convinced a little over a year ago or 2 years ago when Facebook lost 75% of its value overnight, that maybe they didn't do something they were told. And I don't know that, but it's really hard for a major stock like that to just have a complete bloodbath. So anyway, there's Google, and I'm not going to bore you with too many of these, but let's look up just a couple of major ones here. Here's Apple. Ticker's AAPL. There you go. Top of the list. Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street Capital, and also you've got Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway that's tossed in there. Let's look at Microsoft. Pull up Microsoft. There you go. Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, Fidelity. You're starting to see the pattern. I'm going to do one more tech company. I don't want to just sit here and do those over and over, but here's Amazon. All right, so Amazon, here you go. Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street Capital, Fidelity. So are you seeing the pattern here that's going on? So every tech company, every major platform that you know of, with the exception of Twitter, because Elon Musk bought it for $44 billion and took it private. All right. Every company is owned by these three. These are the three largest shareholders, of all of them. All right. So let's take a look at some of your media companies like, how about Fox that is, owns Fox News and all that? You would think, okay, maybe they've got different, different stuff. Here you go. Fox Corporation, Vanguard, BlackRock, Dodge and Cox, which is probably private, but they're State Street. And if you look down here, Vanguard owns a lot of it under their mutual funds also. They're going to get their 20%. Let's take a look at, let's see, Disney. There you go. Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street. Um, you know, so that's all the companies that control all the media. I mean, that's a few of them. And I'm just going to tell you, you can look them all up. I'm showing you how to do it now. They're all going to have the same ownership. It's the same handful of Wall Street banks, or big banks that own these companies. Now, what about all the products that you buy? We talked about that earlier. What about like Procter and Gamble? Their ticker symbol is PG. We pull them up and take a look. Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street Capital. Listen, this pattern will be over and over and over and over, and it'll make you crazy. Once you know this, you can't unsee this, right? Here's Coca-Cola. There you go. Berkshire Hathaway, Vanguard, BlackRock. All right. So I could keep pulling these up. It's the same for McDonald's, Walmart, Costco, just about anybody else you can think of. And these three companies, they're the main ones that show up over and over and over. And I'm talking about BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. These companies combined have $21.4 trillion under their management that they use to go buy these companies. And if you want to know where this money comes from, folks, this is your money. This is money from your pension funds. This is, all the big governments, your big state pension funds. You may have seen recently where the state of Florida and I think maybe Texas did it this last week, where they finally pulled, all of their funds out of BlackRock because they don't agree. They're supporting these things like an open border. So states and there's a lot of people out there that are starting to get frustrated and they're putting pressure on the states. They're starting to react. But I want you to notice if every major Fortune 500 company and every tech company, if they're all owned by these three banks, that's a snake that's feeding its tail here. Those companies keep giving those companies all their money to manage, and I'm just telling you, in America, I don't know why we allow that to happen. It's really, what I would consider to be a monopoly. When you've got three companies that basically are the biggest shareholders in everything. So it's really disconcerting. So what have they done with that? And this is where I was going with that. So let's pull this up. Here's a letter that BlackRock put out in 2021. And I'm going to tell you what they were doing here. Let me get you to a full screen here. I'm not going to read you this whole letter, but it's called Net Zero, a Fiduciary Approach. You can get this off the BlackRock website. And I will tell you this. I'm going to start this tonight. There will be on the Zoo Podcast website. And by the way, there is a website that's brand new. I'm going to show it to you right quick. zoopodcast.com. And when the episode goes up, I'm going to put the links in some of the show notes so you can easily get to everything I'm talking about here. But basically what they're saying in here is that they have adopted what's called ESG. If you don't know what this is, that stands for environmental, social, and governance. And this is everything that you've seen that has been put forth in the last couple of years that has been very contrary and destructive to American values. We're talking about things like climate change, transgender issues, equity, and just all these crazy things that they've been talking about. And because these companies are the major shareholders of everything, they're able to put enormous pressure on these companies. And I'll tell you what, that means basically that these companies are promoting ideas that are not compatible with your Constitution. They're not compatible with your Bill of Rights, things like open borders like we have now. So this is what they're doing to us with that control of information. And I'm going to show you something. This would be funny if if it isn't just horrible what I'm getting ready to show you, but they are, owning all the media the way that they do. If you ever wonder what they're doing with it, let me show you this.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest
responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities, the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 So let me just explain what you just saw. If you live in a local market and you watch, the 6 o'clock news, all right, you're making an assumption these guys are journalists, and they're covering news. And when you see them talking, you think they're just talking. Folks, they're reading a teleprompter, all right? They are being fed a message in a mass way from the top, and they are reading from that teleprompter word for word the exact same thing to everybody in the country. That ought to scare you to death. And I tell you what you just learned. What you just learned is you can't trust any news, right? Any of it needs to be suspect. And I'm talking about all the major news channels, the Fox News, CNNs, MSNBCs of the world, but also your local news. You need to verify your sources of information. And, one of the things on this show and things that will be up on this Zoo Podcast website as we go forward is we're going to put for you on that site good sources of information so you will know who they are, and you can get to them on your own. And I'm talking about like real journalists that are covering real stories, and they're employing good journalistic standards. So we're going to put those on the zoopodcast.com on the website. It's already got a link on the left, and we'll add that here in the next few days. And we'll continue to add to that of people we know that are doing good journalism. There's a lot of great stories out there. I will say with Elon Musk opening up Twitter, that's had a pretty big impact, and truth is starting to get out there. And I'm going to play you a couple of clips here. There was an amazing clip just here recently from Jamie Dimon, the CEO of all companies, JP Morgan Chase. Here we go.
We've got this great hand, but when people say MAGA, they're actually looking at people voting for Trump, and they think they're voting, and they're basically scapegoating them, that you are like him. But I don't think they're voting for Trump because of his family values. Now, if you look, just take a step back, be honest. He was kind of right about NATO, kind of right about immigration. Mm-hmm. He grew the economy quite well.
China virus.
Tax reform worked. Mm-hmm. He was right about some of China. I don't like what he did.
No, I said China virus.
Yeah, I understand. He may have been right. And I don't like how he said things about Mexico. I don't like, but he wasn't wrong about some of these critical issues. And that's why they're voting for him. And I think people should be a little more respectful of our fellow citizens. And when you guys have people up here, you should always ask the why. Not like it's a binary thing. You're supporting Trump, you're not supporting Trump. Why are you supporting Trump?
It's hard to hate 75 million of your fellow Americans. And
I agree.
It's done crazy.
And, the Democrats have done a pretty good job with the deplorables, hugging onto their Bibles and their beer and their guns. I mean, really, could we just stop that stuff and actually grow up and treat other people with respect and listen to them a little bit? And I do think the economy will affect, and I think this negative talk about MAGA is going to hurt Biden's election campaign. Yeah. We've got this great.
So I do think we're starting to see a little changing mood in the country, and some of it is good information is starting to get out there. We had an equally interesting clip here from Bill Maher over the last week or so.
Not if you believe it's murder. That's why I don't understand the 15-week thing, or the Trump's plan is let's leave it to the states. You mean so killing babies is okay in some states? I can respect the absolutist position. I really can. I scold the left on when they say, oh, you know what? They just hate women. People who aren't pro-life, pro-choice. They don't hate women. They just made that up. They think it's murder. And it kind of is. I'm just okay with that. I am. I mean, there's 8 billion people in the world. I'm sorry, we won't miss you. That's my position on that. What?
That's quite harsh, Bill.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not
Is that not your position if you're pro-choice? Not if you believe it's murder.
And I'm going to tell you what happened there. You hear that moment of silence? Nobody knew what to say because, if they started promoting that, the full-term stuff about abortion, they're saying, we're okay with murder. So this stuff is starting to connect. Just in the last couple of days, Stephen Smith on ESPN really ripped everybody about the lawfare that's going on against Donald Trump right now.
When I think about Donald Trump, I think about this case in New York. I mean, I'm looking at the Democrats right now. And again, primarily, I have voted Democrat throughout my life, but I'm utterly disgusted with what I'm seeing because it seems to me that they're trying to use the law on the courts. They've clearly politicized this thing with Donald Trump because they can't come up with a strategy to offset the momentum he's clearly gained. In at least 5 polls, he's up. He's up in the polls over Biden, at least 5 polls that I counted. That's the reality of the situation. Despite the counts against them, the indictments against them, being impeached twice and all of this other stuff, he is the presumptive GOP nominee. And you don't seem to have the issues in your favor, you believe. So because of that, you're going to manipulate the system as best as you possibly can to avoid him possibly running for re-election again. That appears to be their strategy, but I'm here to tell you, it's not working.
All right. So, we're getting a little bit of changing mood in the country. I did see a couple of days ago, there was a 45-point swing from 19 to 30-year-old voters. That's pretty extraordinary by anybody's standards. So, I don't want people to get down or depressed or, about the whole situation here. I think we're starting to make a difference, by getting truth out there. But I tell you what, just, kind of to close this up for tonight, I look around here and, if you're in my age group, kind of like how we started this tonight, I'm looking around and everything feels upside down, right? We've got lawlessness, we've got craziness, immorality, war. We've got, corruption in politics. They're not doing anything to help us as a country. And all I can say, I truly believe this. We have got evil on the earth right now that feels like it has been set loose on humanity like never before in history. And it's been so bad, and people have noticed that it's so bad that, you've seen people come out that weren't likely to be on the air saying this. One of them was Tucker Carlson about a year ago before he left Fox News that said, look, I'm not the most likely guy to be on here preaching to you, but, we need to, pray to Almighty God. It's not a bad idea for us to be praying for our country. So I agree with that, folks. And, if you believe in God, even if you don't believe in God, when you lay down and go to sleep tonight, I tell you what, folks, say a prayer for this country. We really, really have been and are in a bad place, and we need to find our way forward. And we need to do that for all the people that are coming after us, our kids, grandkids, great grandkids. But anyway, it's great to be with you tonight. I'm excited to be here. Listen, it took me a bit here to, get the button pushed on the first episode. It's a hard thing to do. There's a lot going on when you broadcast like this. And you've always got some technical things and things you have to work through. But I tell you what, this first episode, all things considered, went really well tonight. I'm excited to be here. We're going to bring truth to the airwaves in the future, and I'm excited about it. So I'm Jeffrey Sisk. I want to thank you for watching, and then we will be back with you very soon with the next episode of the Zoo Podcast. Have a good evening.
Let freedom ring across America. Let's stand up from sea to shining sea. Hand in hand, arm in arm, united we are proud, free and strong. Let freedom ring across America. Let freedom ring across America.